I'll go ahead and get started here. Welcome to, this is the last presentation slot of the session except for the roundtable. And I hope everybody has gotten a chance to post a few questions in the roundtable. And if you haven't, please go to the reception area and you'll see a link there where you can fill out a simple form there to ask any questions of the DNN leadership panel. So I'll go ahead and get started here. For those of you that may have intended to be in a different session, well, surprise, you're now in my session. This is a bit about, it's really a sponsor slot, if you will, but I've catered this particular presentation to help not only those that may be interested in us and our services, but also understanding some of the fundamentals of our business and how it could honestly apply to any business out there, especially those that are building websites, because there's so much more to consider than just a website, even if you're just a website developer. And maybe you're in an organization or whatever that can apply some of these principles to that organization, no matter the age of that organization. So for those that don't know me, I'm David Poindexter, also known as DNN Dave. So shameless plug, please go out to DNN Dave on YouTube and please subscribe to that channel. I need followers. I really do need followers. So I'd appreciate that. But no, I'm a CEO of nvisionative. We're located in the Charlotte, North Carolina greater area. And I am the strategy lead for the DNN leadership team and on the board of directors of DNN Connect and co-president of Southern Fried DNN, yada, 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 yada. You can get in contact with me with any of those social platforms and GitHub and all that below, as well as our company. Thank you so much for those that actually went and subscribed. That was so fun. It's so thoughtful of you. So what makes up nvisionative? Or any real successful business, I would say, we actually start with a real solid foundation, and I'll go into a little bit deeper dive into each of these a bit. And any good business needs some good building blocks to build things with. Be that either websites or advertising campaigns or whatever it is that your service offers or your business offers or products. You got to have those pieces to put those things together and make them into a nice cohesive offering there. Teamwork is vital. As many of us know, it's always better to have a solid team to work with and bounce ideas off of and help each other to improve over time and really kind of give input and offer different perspectives. The abundance principle is something that it's pretty near and dear to my heart, and we'll talk a little bit about that. And always just having that mentality of growth, no matter what obstacles you may face as a business or with clients that you have or projects that are challenging or whatever, there's always opportunity for growth and refining and owning our craft a bit. And then also just continually improving our processes. There's always room for improvement. So let's talk a little bit about the solid foundation. This is actually an image of one of our clients here, this local, they're a concrete company. And I thought it was fitting to use an image of one of the buildings that they were pouring concrete for. And, a strong foundation in a business is absolutely vital because, things really start falling apart if you don't have some core values and all to really kind of stand on. For us, some of those core values are integrity. I live and die by integrity. If if there's something that's, off or anything like that, or, just questioning the way that we do things or, our motives behind things, it's real important to have that solid integrity in business. Respect for others is very important. Respect for our teammates, respect for our clients and their ideas, being honest with each other. You know, sometimes we need to hear the truth, about how we're feeling, about a certain situation or certain direction that a project is going. And we need to be able to have that honest communication throughout a project or anything that we're doing together. It just really helps. Even sometimes it not so fun to hear that honest truth, but a lot of time it's really enlightening because you didn't intend for things to be that way, but it's good to hear from the client that, oh, we came across a little wrong there. So it's a two-way street for us, and in being really transparent in the way that we do business. Sometimes we leverage in the DNN space, it's a pretty small community in the sense of, providers and service providers in the area and integrators and all that. So we love working with others. If we are not the strongest or the best fit for a certain thing that we need to do, we reach out and we work with somebody in the community or another company in the community, and just being able to be transparent about that. So there's no hidden agendas or anything like that. We really like that. So to that end, we really highly value relationships, be it either a client relationship or relationships just with each other internally. We really value those. So that's really what makes up our solid foundation. Talked a little bit about building blocks. And, as you're starting out as a business or a new team within an existing business, you kind of piecemeal together some blocks that you could possibly build some structures, and you see a nice little, what is this, kind of like Jenga blocks or something like that. Not really building a Jenga tower here, but, you could see how fragile that might look. And that may just be the way that we start out because we're really just learning how these pieces are going to work together to build whatever offering we're going to do. And later, you want to kind of see this evolve to a more solid, model, if you will, for our building blocks that really can be pieced together and they look really nice and clean, as well as working well together so that it's not so easy for them to be knocked over or, have some vulnerabilities like you see on the left hand side there. Um, Teamwork is vital as well. And this one's easier said than done because we're people, we're human, and we have emotions and we have egos sometimes and all that. But really valuing each other goes back to one of those core principles of respect. If we're respecting each other, then you're believing going into a conversation that another team member has something valid to offer. And that goes with our clients as well. We like to be a team with our clients. So we do a lot of creative marketing and, advertising type things. So a lot of times we end up being a marketing extension for clients, that may not have a marketing team, or maybe they just have a single marketing director, and they need a team to bounce ideas off of and bring ideas to the table with. So we really value teamwork here. And notice this one's kind of become cliche-ish, but there is no I in team. It was funny. We had an internal conversation just today of reminding ourselves, of this, how we communicate. It's a we thing. It's not an I thing, right? And it's just something we have to keep top of mind. Talked a little bit about the abundance principle, and I'll spend a little bit of time on this one because it's so key in communities like DNN community where it's open source, and there's a lot of extensions out there that are used that are open source. And for many years, I mean, I've actually been in the DNN community since its inception, and for quite a few years, I mean, I would talk with people and things like that, and I would interact on some of the forums and have conversations with people, but I was a little more of a consumer. And it became apparent to me over those early years that this community was a bit different in that there are people that were just so willing to help others when there were questions. And I was one of those people that needed a lot of help. And, it just kind of became ingrained to me through experience with the DNN community that there's this principle, of you give and you get as a result of that giving. You don't give to get. So it's just something that's kind of woven into the fabric of our community, and I see it every day. And it's just something that is vital to us as a business too. So we allow ourselves the ability to contribute to open source on the clock, so to speak. For the company, we're paying people for that time to contribute to open source, and it's really great. It's a good experience. I know I've valued that years over in. Um, it's not always something that you can directly attribute a return on, but kind of goes back to the principle. It's not the reason why you do it to start with. So if that is kind of core to the way you think, then it can really change your mind, because you find out, I mean, it can really change your perception of it, because you find out that you do end up getting something that's maybe not directly attributable to an ROI or something, but it comes back, good karma, whatever you want to call it. What comes around goes around, that kind of thing. So we like to help others, and we need help sometimes, and we are so appreciative of community members that are able to help us. So this one's a good one as well, because a lot of times when we run into difficult situations where we may not know the answer to a question, or if something is really impacting a client in a negative fashion, and we just don't quite know how to solve it, there's always that opportunity to just change that challenge from a challenge to an opportunity, and kind of humble ourselves. And it goes back to the community as a little bit here as well. I'll make a parallel to this. you know, I don't want to be afraid of admitting that I don't know the answer. I mean, we're not superhuman, right? So sometimes we don't know the answer. We can't find the answer. Google doesn't tell us, or we get misled by some post, somewhere that led us down a path that just didn't pan out in the end. Well, I want to be able to just keep going. I want to find the answer for the client. If we don't know the answer, we're going to try to find it. We're going to try to reach out to others in the community and see if we can really get that answer. And sometimes the answer is we just couldn't figure it out. But we try to go into a solution space of, okay, well, assuming we can't get an answer to this, what do we do? So we try to shift to that kind of mentality there, and always just be growing. It's always something to learn. And kind of along the same lines is, our internal processes, or our processes that we have in place to work with our partners or our vendors and our clients, how we communicate, those kind of things, just always being willing to refine and, admit that, yeah, I thought that was going to work out much better than it did, but we need to tweak that a little bit. And, not being so stuck to, I mean, we are a boutique agency, if you will. We're small enough to where we're able to be a little more nimble with these kind of things and not be so stiff, with these. But, as we've grown, we've needed those processes. If we have a new hire that comes in, or we need to, educate them on how we do something or whatever, it's nice to have it documented. We are by no means perfect in this area, but we're always willing to tweak and improve and admit when something's not working. And there's also this aspect of some people operate in different ways. So what works for one client will not necessarily work for another client. We have some clients that they live and die by their email or something like that. And we have other clients that you're just not going to get an email response. You're going to have to pick up the phone and give them a call. And for us to be adaptable in that way. So, our processes are not so stringent that it doesn't, allow for those flexibilities in communication and things like that. And use that as a small example, but this goes into many different aspects of the business. So let's kind of bring that. We've now got the foundation kind of laid and what the core values and the, of the business are, and some of the different pieces to the puzzle for us. Let's kind of bring it a little bit into our world, right? We've been asked by a client to build a website. Well, those requests come in many different ways, different many shapes, different forms, and it is beyond the technical bits, right? It's not in the end just a bit of code like you see over there on the right, and you have a website. Now, there are plenty of companies out there that will approach it that way. Nothing necessarily wrong with it. It's just we know there's so much more to the puzzle. So we do like to ask the questions that are, sometimes you're constrained by budget or you're constrained by other factors or timeline or things like that. And you're just not able to go into all these different areas that I'm going to touch on here, but those things still exist and they still probably apply in some shape, form, or fashion. So it's nice to have the conversation. A lot of companies will use more of a cookie cutter kind of approach, and it's not a bad business model in the sense of, generating revenue for a business. But is it what the client actually needs in the end? We love to build uber beautiful sites, just stellar designs, but we rarely ever actually get to do it because it's more about what is needed for the website versus what could be done or what we enjoy doing. So just being willing as a business to recognize the actual need, know the audience, and actually deliver that, rather than something that we just want to do or the only thing that we know how to do, kind of in the cookie cutter kind of approach. So one of the things we like to talk about right up front is establishing a budget early on. Sometimes this is known by the client. Sometimes it's willing to be shared. Sometimes it's not for various reasons, and that's okay. But at the onset of a project, we really all need to understand what we're doing and what our limitations are. Are we going to be driven by a budget, or are we going to be driven by a timeline? Do those two line up together? And sometimes we have to kind of read between the lines, of what the actual ask is. And we have to think, okay, well, what is it that the client really needs or is really asking for, even though they're not directly asking for it? And we have to, again, be honest with ourselves in some of these situations and know that sometimes we just have to say no because it may not be, the ask is not the right questions, coming to us in order to be able to deliver what we ultimately know is needed. I would love to share some specific examples, but for obvious reasons, I'm not going to do that. But it's like, it's just something that it's okay as a business to recognize, that it's a setup for disaster, or you're ultimately not going to be delivering what needs to be delivered in the situation. Sometimes we get this wrong too. Sometimes we have taken on a project that we really, should have probably not engaged in, but we just didn't have the foresight to know. Most of our projects go just nice and smoothly. Yes, every project has its bumps along the way, and we'll learn from those mistakes along the way. But it's not a pure science, but just being able to read between the lines and knowing what is really being asked for a project. If the budget isn't there to get the project to that level in a way that we do it and what we do well, then it's okay. It's okay to say no. It's okay for your business to say no as well with things like that. You'll be happier, and the client in the end will hopefully get what they need, from a different provider that could potentially do what they're asking and achieve those goals within that particular budget. So really talking about the budget up front is really nice for all parties, really. So let's talk a little bit about branding, because for us, when it comes to a website, I can't tell you how many requests we get of, okay, I've got this website. The client already has a website, or we already have a website, and we just want it to look different. We're tired of this design. We just need a new design. And we look at the website and we go, huh, well, tell me a little bit about that logo there. Like, how long has that been in play? Have you considered any newer, kind of more modern colors for that logo? Or have you considered actually making it a logo? A lot of clients actually think that their logo is a word mark or a photo with their name plastered across it. So as a branding company, this is kind of where the design flows from the very beginning, is really understanding if the brand is established, does it need any tweaking as we start looking at the design of a new website? Because if we don't get that right, it's kind of like, this may sound a little bit harsh, but it's like sometimes putting lipstick on a pig. It's we can try, we could probably make it better, but is it going to be done right? So kind of goes back to that budget thing. Can we do it right? Is there the openness there to do it? Now that doesn't say that every single project that comes along, we're like, you should do a rebrand. No, I mean, sometimes that's just not required. Sometimes it's a solid brand that's really fine the way it is. No color tweaks, no styling changes needed. It's really a logo. They really have an icon. They really have a solid name. They're not putting ink in their logo or something like that. I mean, INC. And I kind of laugh because a lot of clients believe that their literal name actually has to be a part of their brand. And while it is a part of the bigger brand picture, it doesn't have to necessarily be the visual aspect of it. So I talked a little about logo, but branding goes way beyond just logos. So let's talk a little bit about the voice of the website. How many times have we gone to a website and it just feels disconnected? You go from one page to another and it's like, did the same person write this content? You can tell it was maybe evolved over time, it was iterated on over time, but somewhere along the way, there's just a disconnect and the voice didn't sound the same, across the site. So for us, voice is really important, and that's where our copywriting services come into play, and being able to make sure that there is a solid and established voice for not only the website, but really for the client in general, because for many businesses, the website is really kind of the first place, of that contact with a client. So voice is very important. In the same breath there, as I take a breath. Oh, wait, hold on. There we go. I had to do that. What is the storyline here? Is it just a straight up e-commerce site, or are you really trying to lead people to understand why they would need that product and kind of funnel them in, to that decision? Just hitting them with a grid of products right from the get-go is maybe not the wisest strategy, because you're not telling a story. You're not really painting a picture. Think about some of the major brands, that have stellar websites. You'll notice that there's a clear user journey or a path that they're going along, and that's undergirded by a strong understanding of what the story is. What is the storyline? What is the messaging that needs to happen there? What do you want people to take away from that when they go to that page? And this applies to every page of the site. It doesn't mean that there has to be a ton of content either. We do believe less is often more in this. So it's very important just how what that voice sounds like and how you're delivering the message. So let's go into strategy a little bit, and this is where, gosh, I'll probably talk a little bit too much here, but um, when we're thinking about, and this is not obvious to those that aren't in this world, but if you're someone that needs a new website, and let's say you're a new business, net new business, you're just starting out, you haven't thought through really a lot of what your business model is, and but you've got this great idea, right? And you're excited about the business, and you need to do it right. And your version of right is a little clouded because you don't know exactly what right is yet. And but you need help, you need to get there. Well, here are some of the things that we think about, whether we vocalize that with you or whether you're ready for those kind of things, but we do think about these things regardless. So one of the things that we think about with websites is, who are the users of that website? And in most cases, a client may say, well, I mean, that's our clients, duh. Yeah, but let's dig a little bit deeper. What are those users like? Who are they? Really, who are they? And there goes into a lot of research about what is the real persona of the person that you're going, really understanding your target audience. Is it a 20 something, um, you know, demographic with, I don't know, with a certain level of income or things like that, and what are they thinking when they get to your website? I mean, you may think, well, gosh, that's going deep there. I don't know what they're thinking. Well, imagine it. Like, if a person was, let's say you're a real estate company and you focus on a certain level of, inventory with your houses or apartments, whatever it is, you know what stage of life that person probably needs to be in order to be able to even afford, that level. So if you're in New York City and you're trying to sell apartments there, well, if somebody only has a budget of $200,000, yeah, that's not the right user for your site, right? Because this is not going to cut it in Manhattan. So you know that they need to be a certain level. So really, we think about user personas in the sense of defining who those ideal types of users are for a site, so that then we can really know what they're thinking when they get there. And we literally even, kind of act this out a bit in actual user personas. So it's really kind of a fun exercise to refine that. And this needs to be iterated over time as you learn more about your clientele and who is succeeding on the site, who is not succeeding, who's bouncing, who's not. Understanding what you expect their user journey on the site to actually be, so that you can get the desired outcome of their experience on the site. So in the case of the apartment hunter, maybe you want them to fill out a form after they look at a certain property and contact you to schedule an appointment. That could be one of the desired outcomes. So then that impacts our design of it, because we want to make sure that the voice is appealing to that user persona. We want to make sure the messaging is right to lead them to those properties. And when they get to a property, having a clear understanding of what they can do once they've seen it or they're starting to get interest. So being able to have that clearly mapped out as a user journey is very important. Also knowing kind of how we are going to collectively measure success is very important as well, because if we don't know what our measures of success are, then how in the world are we going to know if we're succeeding? You as a client or us as an agency trying to help you out. So for us to all understand what our measures of success are, then that's really important. So let's take we have a client that's a leader in pool financing. And one of their measures of success is actually getting an application on their website. So, by golly, we're going to design everything to flow to that application so they can actually get somebody to apply on the website. For one of our clients that is a sewage and pumping company, a sewer and pumping company, it's a fun business. But for them, it's to give them a call and schedule an appointment. So that's a little different than trying to get someone to fill out a complicated application online versus picking up a call. So it's a different strategy that goes into that. So we think about the user experience truly, because it's not just some term UX. Oh, we do UX. Maybe we do, maybe we don't. Do we really know what we're talking about with that? Well, to do user experience, properly, you got to be willing to actually test with users to see if your hypothetical design is going to translate to users, or is it going to leave them completely confused and not know what to do or not understand what they're even looking at. Sometimes we project our, thoughts about what's easy and what's not, as let's just say if we have a development mentality, we may be just thinking literally about accomplishing that feature that's being put on the website. Well, that's not really enough sometimes. Sometimes we need to be able to be honest and say, well, using a drop down there actually works better because of X, whatever the reason is, because we see a drop off rate when people hit the spot in the application. So, there's all kinds of things that we can do to improve that. And it's not a one and done kind of scenario either. That we can't just use that term loosely. Thinking about things like sales funnels or funnels, if you hit people right from the beginning, here, buy my online course that I'm selling. It's like, yeah, but you hadn't really told me anything about why I would even be interested in a course from you. Well, that's not going to work. You kind of have to explain who you are and why you're passionate about, educational material in this particular subject. And then eventually you present them with those courses that you're selling online, and they'll already be a little more interested when they get there. You're not just hitting them with the $5,000 online course fee for real estate or whatever it is. So funnels are important. And I'm going to move on off this slide in just a minute, but some of the other things is when it comes into content, how many times have we been asked to actually design a website when there is no content for the website from the client? So if we're creating that together, let's have a plan to create that together, to write it, to take photography if it's needed, or design the graphics that are needed, whatever rich media that might be needed on the site, like a video, production that needs to be done, an explainer video or whatever it is, or a virtual tour. If you're a brick and mortar business with actual product in there, maybe you want to do a virtual tour. Well, how in the world can we effectively design a website when we don't know what that content's going to be? So we do have a content first mentality when it comes to websites, and it just, in the end, you'll have a better product in the end if you go through the hard exercise of figuring out some of this content beforehand. You don't have to figure it all out up front, but it's one of those things, the more we know, the better we can do. Then, and really only then, can we effectively start talking about design of a website. So we've gone through a lot at this point. And, when we are thinking about design, it's not going out and purchasing a template off of Theme Forest or any of those kind of sites and trying to plop the logo in there and put a color palette that matches your branding. Can that work? Yeah, it can. But again, that design was not created for the content that you have. So trying to fit everything into a box like that is just not the way that we approach design. And we believe to really effectively design a website, you need to be thinking about the various types of pages that you might would have on a website, because it'll have different functionality. It may have different design needs in that particular section of the site versus another section of the site, just because of the features or what the content really looks like or how it's structured. We like to think about color, really think about color, because color matters whether you know it or not. There are certain colors that are harsh or cold, and not as in warm and inviting. But all of this is not a one size fits all either. What works for one company will not necessarily work for another company, because it all goes back to what is the voice? What is the message? Well, what do you need to support all that? Typography matters. Design patterns. Are we going to create our own design patterns, or are we going to leverage some other framework? I'm really getting into some of the technical stuff here now a little bit as it relates to design. But are we using Bootstrap for CSS framework, or are we going for more of a kind of a material design approach, or are we trying to roll our own? Accessibility is a big deal when it comes to design, and making sure that the colors are making it such that the contrast with the typography and the content that's on the page is at a high enough contrast for accessible visitors. And, it goes way beyond just that, but I'm using that as an example. User testing on design is really important as well. Oh my goodness, let's talk about some security here. I hope everybody knows who Bun Kwikwi is. If you don't, please search that on YouTube, and you've got to look at this skit from Mad TV. It's hilarious. So you want to make sure wherever you're hosting your websites that security is top of mind. And again, it's not a pure science, but if the company that you're hosting with is not talking about some of these cyber attacks that are happening these days and how serious it is and how easy it is to happen to any of us, that's really important. It should probably be a flag, for you. So we just make sure that any clients that we're hosting their websites, that this is top of mind. We've unfortunately been bit, just like a lot of other people have been bit by these awful attacks. And we learned a lot from it. So it goes back to our process improvement and things like that. We've done a lot to make sure that sites are as secure as they could possibly be, and that we have clear strategy for backup and recovery and all that should the awful actually happen. So then we get into the development aspects of it. And there's a lot we can talk about here, but this can't be where we start. And we had to establish all that other stuff before we could even think about developing it, because if we would have started developing it before we designed it, we were just going to get our structure in place, because we like these development patterns or whatever. Yeah, I mean, we could, but we would end up, reworking things, because designers want something different than developers usually. And we like to make sure the left hand is talking to the right hand. So development team is usually involved in the process of design. So before we're presenting designs, the developers are looking at it going, that's going to be tough, and it kind of a lot of times bubbles back up to the budget conversation, right? So if budget was our driver and we know that we have a particular mark that we're going for from a budget standpoint, well, we can make some decisions along the way that would help reach that budget and not blow the budget, right? So if we know we need to do a little tweak in the design to just make sure we don't end up with that huge can of worms from a development standpoint, we're going to do that and try to catch as much of that as possible early on before we get too far along. So what tooling are we using? That's really important for us, not reinventing the wheel on some of our tooling. The design can change, the code can change, but how we're actually interacting with that is very important to us. So we invest a lot into that. Whether or not we're using a framework or not, sometimes this doesn't matter to the client. A lot of times it's a decision that we make. Um, and we do have some preferences in this area, but we're always kind of looking at that and looking at tweaking it. Sometimes we will use a framework. Sometimes we won't use a framework to do something. What is the architecture of our code? Are we integrating with other services? Are we structuring our content in some kind of like, structured content kind of solution? And usually that answer is yes for us. But there are certain sites, especially one that's already established and already has certain set of extensions. If it's a DNN site that's being leveraged, that we really can't do that. Or if we're on a WordPress site and they're not using some kind of structured content, sometimes we can and sometimes we can't. It just kind of depends on what the state of the website is, but we do try to go down that path as much as possible. We're ever evolving our source control as it relates to any of the code that we're creating, be that the theme of the site or the structured content solution of the site or any custom extensions that we're writing. We're making sure that those are in a proper source control environment that the client has access to as well. Are we reinventing the wheel or going through manual steps when we don't have to? We're trying to get better and better about this, but continuous integration is important, as well as looking into continuous deployment. Sometimes for sites where we can do that, where from a development standpoint, we get finished with some changes that are done and essentially clicking a button and everything gets built automatically and deployed automatically, depending on which steps we took during development. That's just something that's smart, because if you're repeating the same thing over and over and over again, and it's taking you X amount of hours to do that, it makes sense to automate some of that. So automating that build and deployment type environments is very important. Let's see here. So some other things to be thinking about with websites is social media and how that's going to interact with your website. Maybe it's just something as simple as you're going to have people that are sharing a website, a URL of your website onto social media. Well, when they do that, have you ever looked to see what that actually looks like? Is it pulling in a DNN logo, or is it pulling in the image that you want it to pull in the preview of that social post? Does it look right on Facebook? Does it look right on Twitter? Does it look like right on some of these other platforms? That's something we need to be thinking about when we're building websites. And that's a fairly small development effort to make sure that those look really great, and also gives you a way to control that as an administrator of the website. Or are we doing some more advanced integrations, with social media? Sometimes we have those. SEO. This is something that so many think it's just putting a description and a title on a page. And while titles are incredibly important in SEO, there's so much more to SEO. There's understanding where you live in the marketplace as it relates to search engines. If you are running a plumbing business, for instance, well, we know that those are a dime a dozen out there, and it's a very competitive space. So really understanding what your key differentiators are as it relates to searches out there, what those are, that ultimately is going to translate to certain keywords. And also what geographical area you are servicing. Knowing all that is incredibly important, because when it comes to eventually you're going to probably want to do some search engine marketing. Well, you need to know what, your budget is going to be willing to be for that, but also know what you actually need to be able to invest in that in order to succeed or have success in conversions from that. So there's a lot of things that can be done on site, on the actual physical site that actually impacts SEO. And it kind of comes back up to also some of those things we talked about earlier, having a good voice, having a clear message, a unique voice, by the way, and unique content that's going to not be showing up as duplicate content. So let's say you're running a dentist office and you decide to go and hire a company that is an expert in your type of business. And they build you a website and you get their whole package of wonderfully written content. And really, a lot of it is wonderfully written a lot of times. What you probably don't realize is that every other client of the company has some version of that exact same content on their website. Well, guess what that's going to do for your search engine results? Not so good. And, recovering from damage that can be done by duplicate content like that is, as we would say in the South, a tough row to hoe. So a lot of times it ends up being almost a do-over, on a new domain, on a website, to really be able to truly recover from some of that. And maybe you've hired a search engine optimization company that they are experts in search engine optimization, but yet they have putting on their black hat, instead of the white hat when it comes to SEO, and they have stuffed links in all kinds of places that shouldn't be links just to get backlinks. And this is some of the offsite type SEO activity that can happen to generate interest in your website, but yet it's damaging because it's low quality backlinks. So all of that kind of comes into play too, or they're stuffing your, we've even seen stuff like where, remember back in the days when in DNN where we had the vulnerability with user bots, or bots that were actually making users. Well, one of the goals of that was to be able to get to the biography page or the bio piece of information on a user profile page and stuff links into it for other websites. Well, yeah, that caused a lot of us a lot of pain being able to deal with all that, but they were trying to put backlinks out there. So there's so many wrong ways to approach SEO, and we would love for our clients not to go down that path, or not even have to recover from going down that path without realizing that that was what was happening, because it can do a lot of damage to your domain authority. Analytics also come into play in this area as well. And then we get into digital advertising, and really, if we've done all of these things right, and it's getting to a product that's worth talking about, worth referring people to, and when that type of user comes to the website, that you've actually made it so that they can convert, and go to some of those goals that you've set for their conversions. Then you can start looking at search engine optimization, when it comes to search engine marketing, and being able to really drive traffic there, because you're confident that when they get there, they're not going to be confused. They're not going to bounce because of poor user experience or a design that's just not appealing to them. So having all that strategy in place and building off of that strategy is super important. And then you can look at things like over the top advertising on, connected TV and things like that, being able to run, commercial out there in that environment, really be able to funnel people there, or building landing pages on your site that already establish some of the principles if you've put into place with the rest of the site that are key landing page for certain services or offerings that you have, or things that you're offering to the public. You would be able to do that so much more effectively at this point, because you have established a good foundation to build off of. Building funnels and really putting goal conversions when it comes to your analytics and understanding, are people actually converting? So if your goal is for them to pick up the phone call, pick up the phone and schedule you to come out and, fix their sewer problems. Well, how did you know they called? Well, you've got to have something in place to actually measure that click when they are on their mobile device and they click that ad that you're putting out on Google, for them to be able to call you. So we have mechanisms to be able to do that and actually track diversions so that we can actually measure that success. And I hope that you're not feeling like this at this point. and that you're feeling much more like this, really nice and happy. And, maybe some of this stuff is a little more than what you would normally think of when you're thinking of, hey, can you build me a website or can you design me a website? But maybe there's some nuggets of information here that can help you in your business, or maybe maybe it'll attract you to actually contact us so that we can help you. So we would love to do that. What questions do you have? I haven't been monitoring too much of chat over here, but I'll take a gander over here and see if we have any questions. Dustin, I don't know if you're connected now or not, or if you've seen any questions that have come up that I may have missed. Oh, thank you, Ed, for the comment there. Appreciate that. Let's see. I see some familiar faces in here. Is that you, Dustin?
Yes. Yeah, I wasn't sure if my mic was on. I was saying that I've been kind of keeping an eye on the chat. I've seen a lot of comments, not exactly questions. And I just looked at the Q&A. Some people have been putting them in there in various sessions, but not here.
So I know we're getting close to the hour here, so
about 10 minutes
if you
left.
have more questions, feel free to to ask or come on camera and we'll chat about it. But if not, I really appreciate everybody's attendance, and I hope you've had a great DNN Summit. It's been a good one. I see some comments like "boom" and "bada bing."
Yeah, that one came in right when you did your the brunts,
Oh, gotcha.
That one. Yeah, there you go. Your little sound effect there. That's nice to have aboard.
Yeah.
Radio shock jock.
Heck yeah. I see a comment. Let's see, $200 will not cut it for my first as an Etsy side business. Oh yeah,
I think that was about when you were talking about budgets and things. Yeah.
And that's interesting that you mentioned that, Alessandra, because having the most expensive experience, in building a website may not be the right place for you to start. Sometimes you just don't have that kind of budget, and it's okay. It's all right. It's okay to start with an Etsy site or a GoDaddy builder, website builder site or whatever. Maybe that's just all that you can do. It's okay. But the thing that I'll say is you'll eventually, come to know that could it be better? Yeah. So, just continuous improvement, and you may not be at that stage yet. It's okay. It's totally okay. We actually refer quite a bit of people to, go to some website builder, kind of experience, because that's what they can afford. It's okay. It's not a big deal. You can build some beautiful websites like that, by the way. Will it be the absolute most effective? No, maybe not, but who knows? Maybe you're really creative with that platform and you can really make a good experience. There's no shame in it. That's for sure. We do try to not waste people's time when it comes to this type of thing. So, if we find out, and we have that, one of the reasons we want to have that budget conversation early on is, hey, if you're looking for a $200 website or a $500 website, we're probably not the right match for you. Well, we're not the right match for you, but we can help point you in the right direction, and maybe that's where you need to start. And then come back to us in a couple of years or a year from now when you're at a different level with the business and can actually take it to the next level. Okay, I'm not seeing anything in the Q&A over here at all. So either I bored you all to complete death, or I was so incredibly knowledgeable in sharing all this stuff that you're just mesmerized and amazed at all that you've learned.
Well, of course, that's it.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot, everybody.
Mm-hmm. Thanks, everyone, for attending the session. Thank you, David, for giving a wonderful discussion. A lot of good thoughts to take home and spur some discussions, perhaps with clients later on down the road. I want to thank all of our sponsors for making all this possible. And thank you all for attending.